Want to know where your favorite deck sits ahead of the best set in years?
No question about it, I am ready to get hurt again.
What's good? Welcome to the channel. We are taking an early dive at the Paldea Evolved tier list. So there was a few running around. I did enjoy looking at those, but I felt they didn't encompass enough. So I've added a few more decks to the pile. I've broken off my tiers into a little more forgiving, give you an idea of what I'm thinking. Do you buy some cards early before they spike? Do you sell some off before they nosedive? Well, let today's video be your guide. And with that said, let's dive right in. So S tier, best deck in format, or potentially best deck in format. Tier 1, top 10, powerhouse, usually 1 or 2 bad matchups at best. 1.5, so it's on the doorstep of 1, or it's just been kicked out of tier 2. So if the room swings a certain way, it can go up. If the room swings against it, it goes down. Easy enough, it's a meta pick. Tier 2, so it has a couple flaws: damage, consistency, or matchup spread. So depending on where the meta sits at the top, these decks are usually firmly planted in tier 2. They can still win, they can still top cut, but again, you gotta get a little lucky. Tier 3, these decks, I don't know how they still perform well. They have so many bad matchups across the board, or they are so flawed, but yet people will still run the deck hot. They'll top 8, they'll top 16, top 4, hell, they might even win the whole event. And tier 4, I just put this one in here to give you an idea of what I consider bad, mispiloted more often than it's played correctly, or just don't buy, or offload if you have. Everybody wants to know, my last video, Baxcalibur, where do I put it? Tier 1, it is the toolbox of water. Baxcalibur is a broken ability. Irida comes in a theme deck. I think it's very, very good. Unlimited damage cap and a capacious bucket in an ability. Baxcalibur is a 1. It's going to struggle a little bit in the Lost Box, but I do think Iono plays and Radiant Greninja can help you catch up. Cool? Gotcha. Darkrai. First, tier 4. I'm sorry. There's one deck on my radar for Dark type that I think is much, much better, lower maintenance, and you should strongly consider before picking this up. It has a lot of issues. If you play it, power to you. Put Control, tier 3. I'm not sure what face it's going to take, so I'm going to lowball it this time. I usually overvalue it, so I'm going to lowball it. And if somebody spikes it out of the water, looking at you, Sander, by all means, I will admit when I'm wrong. Snorlax Control. So, no. Tier 4. You really have to catch your opponent slacking to do well with this deck, and most people will misplay, or they'll give their opponent a chance to climb back into the game. There's too many chances to make a mistake playing Snorlax Control. Jet Energy's coming, Escape Rope, Switch Cart. Most decks play 10 to 12 switch outs, so like good luck. Blissey, back in the format. So Charm of Courage brings it back up to 300. V-Guard 330. Radiant Greninja's still a thing. Sharon's Care, slower game. I think Blissey's almost there, but I do think it's back. Dialga, alright. This is that deck that I just keep going, how does it do well? How does it keep placing? It keeps showing up in top 16s, top 8s elsewhere, and I think it won an event in the last format or so. Not like online, of course, but still. Dialga, just no matter how bad it seems to be, it's still there. Kyurem, bad. Iono's going to break this deck open, and you're just going to want to throw it in the garbage. So if you have them and they're worth anything, toss them. If you want to keep them, put them in the binder. They're not quite there anymore. Katina. So I think this is a tier 1. Iono, Judge, Path, Starbirth, and you're hitting for 280 without weakness. It has a lot of strength. I don't think it's going anywhere. It's a 2-prize metagame, and those two team up to be one of the scariest combos in the game. Arc Ice Rider. So with Arceus, the worst you can be is tier 2. That's how consistent Starbirth is, and Trinity Nova, and all of the other powerhouse tools it has. Ice Rider does sort of do Giratina things, but it has a weakness. It might be hit for weakness. It's also giving up 3 prizes, but I do think it's a strong pick. Just love me some good Ice Rider Calyrex action. Deck on the downswing. Hate saying this one, but I think it might be time to start offloading these. Intel Urshifu is on the downswing. Got a very bad damage cap. It is seeing a rough time against Lugia, which is still a good deck. Goodra also gives it some fits. It is what it is. Unless we see a massive swing towards lightning, I don't know how much I like this deck. It can beat things. It still loves the Lost Box. Still loves a Gardevoir deck setting up. But I think 2 is kind of where this deck is stationed, and it might be going further and further down the totem pole. Its successor, Meowscarada. So I have this one as a 1.5. Everything that Inteleon Urshifu does well, this deck also does. You can even work in a couple copies of Urshifu if you really wanted to. I think you could. But this thing just hits harder. 220 for 2 over 140 for 2. Nah, I'll take the 2 or 220 plus the ability. Yogaloo turns were very easy to set up. I think Meowscarada is one of the best decks out of Paldea Evolved. Let's see. Turbo Dragonite. Probably the best deck at a tier 1. Smacking your opponent for Dragon Gale turn 1 250. That's not fair. That's not fair at all. That's still going to be very, very good. And people who know how to sequence the deck properly will still set you up for that Aqua Storm, since I've been told time and time again that I've been playing the deck wrong, and it is just a stupid card you need to include. I'm acknowledging it. I'm aware. All right, so we've got Miraidon Flaffy. I think this one is one combo piece away from being the second best like energy accelerating toolbox in the game. You got Miraidon, you got Raichu, you got Magnezone, you got Skystone, Forest Stone, you've got your double sniping. Take your pick, and then you got Electricity Generator. We're just like one EX away, or one basic Pokemon away from making this card deck really, really good. And fighting is almost nowhere to be seen. Tier 2 contender. This deck is what it is. It's a known commodity. If you're a confident pilot with the deck, you get some good matchups, you can do well, but it's too linear, which is good in some respects, but it's very, very linear. Alright, this one hurts to do. We are going to put Mega Pig in bad, so I would hold on to it. It's not necessarily like sell off, because I don't think it's worth much, but it needs too much right now. It's in a bad place. I wouldn't really confidently recommend it to anybody. First best deck in format. So Lost Box Tina, I was confident on it in the Scarlet and Violet format. I think it gets better. I do. The Jet Energy, Iono, Temple of Sinnoh. The deck plays as a 2-prize deck, plays the 1-prize deck. It has a massive damage cap, and it still has access to the most broken card in format in Lost Mine Sableye. So I think Tina isn't going anywhere, and I think if you play it well in a best of 1, you're doing great. In a best of 3, you just have to be a little clever. But I think it can win you any matchup in the board. Best deck in format we have, Gardevoir. Reversal Energy, Iono. I think Gardevoir has a lot of tricks in its bag. We're not going to touch the Champions Festival. Gardevoir is very good. Prepared to beat it. Be prepared to play against it. There's a lot of Gardevoir on the horizon. My last S tier deck, Fusion Mew. So this one's going to get me the flack, and I'm ready for it. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me Spiritom's the end of it. Drapion's the end of it. How many sets in are we since Drapion dropped? Still here. Mew's not going anywhere. People will stop respecting it. Fusion Mew will do well. Did it not just do well at a couple regionals? Could be wrong. Seems like it's doing pretty well if you ask me. Fusion Mew on the upswing. If you have it, keep it. If you don't have it, you should pick it up, or at least give it a test and see how it works. Build though, I do think is a 1.5. Not being able to apply pressure going second really sucks. So if you don't win the coin flip, you're kind of at a disadvantage. Good players can claw their way back, and I'm never going to disrespect a good player playing a good deck. I just think Mew needs a lot of things to go right. Quakewavel, new deck. I botched the name. I apologize, sort of. Better water decks out there. I am excited to cover it. Keep an eye out for that. Feels like a Cheryl deck, but there's so much Iono you don't want to. It's a work in progress. Drago, Fortress. Well, I like Fortress, but playing Regidrago and then blowing up 2 of your own prizes and then giving up 2 Dragos means that your opponent has an easier way to beat your deck. Plus, you still need to dump all the dragons in the discard pile, so it's not quite bulk yet, but it's not looking good at the moment. Regigigas. Okay, so I'm not entirely sure what the hype is on this one. A lot of people do miss the deck, and I get Luminous Energy fixes some of what it was missing. What do you do against Lost Box? Before you had Scoop Up Nets to really mess with their Lost Mine damage. What do you do now? You have the Champions Festival, sure. You can play some Picnic Baskets, but that just sounds really bad. Not Dead in the Water. We'll put it there. Lugia Urshifu. This one here was almost an S tier deck if it wasn't for coin flips. This would be my best deck in format if it wasn't for coin flips. Summoning Star is very good. Archeops is very good. Accelerating Energy once they're on the board. I don't think it's going anywhere. And Urshifu over Duraludon. I have Duraludon as another tier 1 deck. It's been my best performer of the Scarlet and Violet format. Just as Skyscraper, we are getting, what, 3 new special energy? We've got Jet Energy, Therapy Energy, Reversal Energy. That's not bad at all. Being able to wall off against a Gardevoir or against Fusion Mew or you name it. I do think Arctura is back on the upswing. If you don't have it, pick it up before it spikes. Keep it. It's a solid play. There's a few builds with Umbreon. Flying Pika also exists. Dura can partner with quite a bit. And on the topic of Arc Pika, we are going to put it here. What's your partner? Umbreon, Espeon, Tina, Duraludon. Depends on your partner, depends on the strength of the deck. It's a counter deck, so 1.5 is specifically the counter tier or the meta tier dependent, so your deck does better or worse depending on what you're going to see off. We're putting this one here, so if you don't see a Dura, and that's with Lugia, if you don't see Dura, I like this one. If you do see a lot of Dura, you're in bad times. Color list is nice, but again, I wonder how much more consistent it'll be than the single strike package tier. Anything Radiant Greninja, Kyogre, Moltres, Snorlax, Raikou, Zapdos, you name it, they're all still stupidly consistent. Concealed cards with the Lost Engine is just a powerhouse, and those players have been playing it so long that the deck is going to look filthy under the right hands. It's not going anywhere, so it's still tier 1. Iono, all they're going to do is just thin their deck down a little more aggressively in the early phases. Deck will adapt, it's not going anywhere. Why play Exodia Gardevoir when we have better Gardevoir? Tier 2, it's just so combo-y and janky, and you gotta mess with your counts. If somebody can find a smooth way to playing Mewtwo V Union, by all means. Again, I think it's just gonna struggle with stuff in tier 1. S tier is gonna be more consistent, and it's gonna pick you apart a little faster. So Gardevoir is kind of on the downswing with Mewtwo, and it's probably just gonna adopt a more Gardevoir focus. We are gonna get Shadow Rider out of the way. Not sold on Hatterene Klefki. Klefki, anything is bad. Hell, play Mewtwo instead. Think a ton. Not quite sure where this card sits. Having a big hand is tough to do, but when it does, it feels really good. It's not dead in the water yet, like the decks in tier 4. Galadur, if you're not playing water, the deck is very strong. Not everybody's going to jump on the Baxcalibur train until at least July, so you'll have a month to mess with it. Wings of Unity. Okay. I'm not sold. People will try to make that work and cite Mad Party and Night March, and people forget that Sableye exists. That's an easy win. Oh, you play the tool card? We're just going to discard the tool. The Murkrows, yes, it hits Darkness. Yes, it beats up the Gardevoirs. It meets up the Mews, which, actually, now that I say it, let's put it up in tier 3. So it's not quite dead. I take it back. Murkrow might be the way you get there. Bro. It's just a faster beat stick. You'll either run the deck hot and do very well, or you'll miss everything. White Ops. There's a new stadium coming out that ups retreat cost by 1. I think that's the missing piece because it's more effective than a choice band. My sleeper pick, so if you don't already own it, buy it now. I think I'm going to put it towards the top of tier 2 here. Yes. Samurott, so it's efficient, it hits dark. It sets up Yoga Loop turns. You have a 1 prize Moltres. Once they get to the 3 prize part of the game, you can actually switch the deck over to Galarian Moltres and take your Samurotts off the board. So I think those two make a nice combo, and Bibarel Iono proofing you allows you to really steal games. It's not quite 1.5, but it is so close. Ting-Lu, I'm going to go meta pick. Arceus, Greninja, Comfey, you name it. Shutting off your opponent's abilities will cripple their deck. Ting-Lu, meta pick. They don't expect you, you're golden. If they start playing that stupid picnic basket, you're screwed. Ooh, Zoro Toolbox. I'm not going to count this one out because it could be a plethora of things. So it could be the mill, it could be an actual attacking toolbox, it could be control. Potential's there on this one, and I'm just going to put it as 2 because it probably is a handful of decks, all just kind of smashed into one. Card. This is one where the pilot is really good, and you can do a lot of nutty things. I would love to see Banette sneak its way into this deck, Banette EX, and just really mess with your opponent. But again, people still keep performing well with this deck. Don't write it off. It's not as strong as Ogre Greninja, but it's got its merits. Fortress, is it Woo-Chien? I like this one actually more than the Drago. So you set up a couple Fortress, or you set up a Fortress, blow it up, search for 5 energy. You set up Slaking, Regidrago, Woo-Chien, any other colorless attackers. There's a weirder you can also play. You've got Gardenia's Vigor. This deck feels like it's a grass toolbox waiting to happen. So I do like it in tier 2, and I expect people to experiment with it. Meta-dependent for Goodra. Its worst matchups are actually at the top. Lugia, Fusion Mew, Gardevoir with a reversal energy. You can't rolling iron your way through something with an unlimited damage cap. Giratina also has Star Requiem, so good luck. If you don't expect to see much of that, Goodra is a good pick. If you do expect to see much of that, oh, it's rolling iron and prey. Last but not least, everybody I've spoken to at their local leagues, a handful of leagues, they've been playing Palkia, so we've got Palkia Ice Rider. Let's say solid pick in tier 2, and the extra types and the bulk for the Ice Rider is nice. Lost City, Temple of Sinnoh, you name it, it's still a strong choice. It's not be all end all, but for a budget pick it's nice. You can pick up the horses for like $2-3. And of course, Palkia out of the box. So you upgrade it, maybe put $5-10 into it. Palkia is strong, Subspace Well is good, Star Portal's good, Greninja is good, Bibarel's good, you name it. I do think out of the box, you just make some small tweaks. If you enjoyed the list, let me know what you think. What did I get wrong? Was I too gracious? Was I too harsh? You decide. Send me those lists on Twitter. Come on, folks. We're 2 weeks away. I want to see what you're thinking.